Hey all, Bree from the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I have got a gift for you this holiday season. If you love the No Guilt Mom podcast, and I mean love the No Guilt Mom podcast, then tell us about it. Leave us a review, and you can be entered to win a No Guilt Mom gift card. All you have to do is leave a review, take a screenshot, and then simply go to noguiltmom.com/review to enter our giveaway for a free No Guilt Mom gift card, simply for telling us what you think about the podcast. It is amazing. But don't delay. Get right on this, as we're going to be giving away that No Guilt Mom gift card on December 21st. So get right on over and visit noguiltmom.com/review.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I am your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by my gleeful co-host, Bree Tucker.
Why, hello, everybody. How are you?
We have one of the best episodes for you today. It's Ned Johnson and Dr. William Stixrud. They are the authors of The Self-Driven Child, if you know of that book, and they have a new book coming out.
Oh, and it's such a good one.
Yes, it's called What Do You Say? Talking with Kids to Build Motivation, Stress Tolerance, and a Happy Home. It's really like the how, like how you present all these things to your kids.
Yes, it's the book that we all need. I mean, seriously, that hits on everything. Your kid's not motivated? Here you go. Your kid's stressed out? Here you go.
Yeah.
You need like how to make sure that your house is a little bit more happy? Here you go. They cover it all.
They cover it all. And I hope that you enjoy this interview as much as we enjoyed having it. By the way, like, we were very happy that we're like, you guys need to come back. You need to come back and do more. And they've promised. You will. Oh, I don't think we have that recorded though, but they did promise they'll come on and do as many as possible with us.
We need to work on having that whole like No Guilt Mom after hours.
After
bonus
hours. I just have to keep
episodes.
recording because it's so funny when you're doing podcast episodes. You feel like you really need to get everything in that recording, and then as soon as the recording stops, it's all let loose, and that's where the interesting stuff happens.
I know.
And so we're not going to be hitting the record button anymore. I'm just going to record the whole thing. I'm living on the edge. No, but so Dr. William R. Stixrud, he is a clinical neuropsychologist and founder of the Stixrud Group, as well as a faculty member of Children's National Medical Center and an assistant professor of psychiatry and pediatrics at the George Washington University School of Medicine. He is the co-author with Ned Johnson of the national best-selling book, The Self-Driven Child, and his work has been featured in major media outlets such as NPR and the New York Times and many more. He is also a longtime practitioner of transcendental meditation, and he plays in the rock band Close Enough.
How did I miss that earlier?
We both missed it. I was reading this to Brie. I'm like, did you know Bill was in a rock band? And we're like, what? So next interview.
Yes.
And then Ned Johnson is part of our Two Timers Club here on No Guilt Mom podcast. He's an author, speaker, and the founder of PrepMatters, an educational company providing academic tutoring, educational planning, and standardized test prep. A professional tutor geek since 1993, Ned has spent more than 40,000 one-on-one hours helping students conquer standardized tests. He's a battle-tested veteran in the fields of test preparation, anxiety management, and student performance. And Ned has written for major news outlets as well as the New York Times. So enjoy our interview with these two fantastic men, Dr. William R. Stixrud, who we call Bill, and Ned Johnson. Hey, if you have not yet grabbed our Happy Parent Checklist, what are you waiting for?
Yeah, what are you doing?
In it, we give you some step-by-step strategies that you can use to delegate more to your family and to release that guilt from actually asking for help in your home and getting it. You can get the Happy Parent Checklist at www.noguiltmom.com/HPC. And we also have a link in the show notes. And now, on with the show.
You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. Bill and Ned. Ned, you are a second timer or two-timer, as we say.
Yes, part of our two-timer
One
club.
of our two-timer club.
The one time being a two-timer is awesome.
Yeah.
Woo! I won't tell my wife.
You don't know, right?
We're always like, we need to change that title. And then we're like, no, we're going to stick with it.
I like it.
We're going to stick with it.
And I'm just the old timer.
But we're so excited for this conversation because we're big fans of your first book, The Self-Driven Child. And we both got the chance to read your upcoming book, What to Say. Let's dive into this conversation about motivating kids because it is on a lot of parents' minds and how to do that effectively. So before we get into it, can you guys tell us just a little bit about you both and your story for those of listeners who have not heard of you?
So this is Bill, and I'm a neuropsychologist, and I've made a living the last 37 years testing kids and teenagers and young adults if they have attention problems or learning problems or social problems or emotional problems. And I try to figure out what they're good at, what's hard for them, and how to help them. And I also, one of the transformative relationships, my experiences in my life was I flunked out of graduate school the first time I went because I was just so anxious and insecure. I didn't turn in a single assignment. And it felt to me like my whole life has gone up in smoke. I thought I was going to be an English professor. And it took me about a month to realize it was the best possible thing that could have happened to me. And fortunately, I learned to meditate and wasn't so anxious. I could actually turn in my assignments after that. I went back to graduate school. And I just loved being a clinical neuropsychologist and also loved the experience of working on books with Ned.
I read in the book about your practice of meditating and the transcendental meditation and how you said it completely kind of changed who you were and changed how you approached problems. And I find that fascinating that meditation can have that effect.
Well, I just think that's something that historically all over the world, millions and millions of people, when I'm talking with kids who are really struggling and they're on medication, they're in therapy, they say, what else can I do? I say, why don't you think about the things that people all over the world have found to be life-changing? And one of them is meditation.
Ned, what about you?
So I've spent almost 30 years as a test prep guru, test prep geek, I suppose, more accurate term, helping kids prepare for and battle an alphabet of standardized tests, so SAT and ACT, GMAT, GRE, all that kind of stuff. And I've been palling around with this guy for almost 10 years now. And really, it's been great fun for me because Bill knows so much about how brains work and how they develop, what causes problems and what makes it easier. And then I've just been able to, like you sort of talked about being the color commentary there for the comedic effect. There was at least 4 or 5 years where I would say things like, well, my friend Bill says, and I would take these things and try like a comedian to try to figure out how to say them in ways that they landed. If the kid would be like, that didn't work. When they go, ooh, it's like, that's the way to say it. And so that's been some of the fun part about writing this book is all of us as parents, as educators have things to share, have wisdom sometimes hard-earned. And so much of it is not the what, but the how. And so with all the time that I've spent, both of us have spent one-on-one talking with kids, we think we've stumbled into some ways that are more effective in getting those messages across.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up because a lot of parents come to us and they're like, I tell my kids this over and over and over again, and it just does not seem to stick. And I love how you compare it to being a comedian practicing your set. You're like, which one worked?
If the audience is walking out the door before the show is over, your message has not landed. So, yeah.
Well, both of us really, really loved your book. And in particular, 2 chapters grabbed us. The one about helping kids find their own motivation. And then the other one about helping kids change. And that is what we're going to focus on today. And first, I mean, all parents' minds is they're sick of like the nagging and the reminding. And we know that nagging and reminding breaks down the parent-child relationship and isn't the best way to go. But parents are like, well, what do I do instead? I don't know how to get my kids to do their schoolwork or do their homework or give their quote unquote best effort without the nagging and reminding. So what do you find is the best ways to get kids to actually want to do their work and want to put in the effort?
Well, one of the postulates or theorems, it's been so long since I've taken algebra, I don't remember when you're one of the basic things that we believe is you can't make another human being do something against their will.
Yes.
And we know that the more you try to change somebody, that the more pushback you get and the more it interferes with the relationship. So we start with this premise that you can't motivate your kid. You can't motivate your kid more than he wants to be motivated. Mm-hmm. And so what we focus on is helping the kid figure out what's important to me. As Ned said, this is the kid's life. And how do we help them figure out what's important to him? What do you want to work hard at? I ask kids oftentimes, is there stuff you want to work harder at? And how could we figure out how to get yourself to do it? But I think the first first thing is just realizing that the more we nag, the more we try to motivate kids through guilt or fear, the more they just react in a negative way to us and fight us. So we start out simply with the premise that you aren't supposed to be able to motivate the goal is to help your kid find what's important to him and find the things that motivate him or her.
Yeah, I mean, we all want our kids to work hard, but if we really think about it, more than wanting them to work hard, we want them to want to work hard. So many of us as parents, we default to, nagging and pushing and bribing and, things that are just carrots and sticks. But carrots and sticks are not getting kids to want to do things. What we're talking, those are extrinsic motivators. And what we're really trying to do is foster or develop intrinsic or autonomous motivation. And because the nature of the motivation matters remarkably more so than does the total amount, unless you want to go through life with your kid, on his heels the whole time, nagging and swatting him every step of the way, which isn't going to be fun for either of you. There's a student we talk about in the book, super academic kid at really the elite independent school here in DC. And his parents had seen a book talk, and I asked him whether his parents read it and whether it made a difference. He said, yeah, they have. And I said, well, how did it help? He said, they finally stopped asking me, shouldn't you be doing your homework? Now inside, I'm like, yes. I'm like, well, tell me more about that. And he says, well, honestly, every time they say, shouldn't you be doing your homework? It just makes me not want to.
Right.
And so when we nag, we do this because saying nothing is hard and sitting on our hands is hard. And we feel like our sense of control is low. It stresses us out. So we jump in and start nagging. It makes us feel better, but it makes the kid feel worse and makes them not want to do what is so often in their own best interest. So it's not easy to do, but the model for developing intrinsic motivation or autonomous motivation holds that everyone, these are foundational psychological needs, need a sense of competency, a sense of relatedness or connection, and a sense of autonomy. And so when we start nagging, we might up that competency piece so we get the kid to do stuff, but we undermine their autonomy and their relatedness with us. And so it's not easy to do. Bill is a client who said, we shouldn't call it raising kids. We should call it lowering parents, really.
Lowering parents. It's really true, though, because
Unplugging us, turning the dial down.
Yeah.
Just a wee bit.
And I like how you refer to it in the book as like balancing that stool of the three things of autonomy and competence and relatedness, and really focusing on that relationship. And something else you said struck me about how that the nagging and reminding and the asking prevents kids from doing what's actually in their best interest to do. And it's so interesting because I think we all go back as parents to how we performed in school and how we achieved and what motivated us. And I could think of when I was in high school and I was getting C's, and my dad took me out of my favorite extracurricular activity because I got a C on the report card.
Well, and let's also add the extracurricular activity wasn't like you were doing like badminton.
It was Odyssey of the Mind, which was a creative problem solving thing. But looking back at that, taking away was what caused me to, Bill's shaking his head and I want to get into this.
I want to know where the story ends. I'm trying to think, did you step it up or did you go for, you know what I'm going to do with this car? I'm going to drive my car of my life straight into the ditch just to show you.
Gotta go live in a van down by the river.
Down by the river. I am a people pleaser by nature. And on me, I had all this fear. I brought it up to high B and I got back in.
Hey, Aubrey here, and I wanted to share one of my favorite gifts to give during the holiday season, a Storyworth book. It is the most amazing gift ever. Storyworth is an online service that lets you create a special and unique gift of someone's story. I've given Storyworth books to both of my parents, and it has been their favorite gift, hands down. And did I mention it is so easy? Storyworth emailed my parents questions every week that I handpicked from their massive list of questions that they have. All my parents had to do was open their email and answer them. That easy. I asked my dad questions like, did you have any rules that you set for yourself as a parent, which you immediately broke? And he did. I even asked both of my parents, are you more like your mom or your dad? And they shared a lot of really amazing qualities that I didn't know about my grandparents at the time. Then at the end of the year, Storyworth compiles all of their answers, puts them into this gorgeous book that covers everything. My parents love showing us their books, and I personally love getting a chance to read them. With Storyworth, I am giving those I love a thoughtful and personal gift from the heart that preserves their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/NGM and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/NGM to save $10 on your first purchase.
This message is sponsored by Greenlight. It is so hard to raise kids who know how to manage money. Bree, right now, my kids are all about earning money for presents. My daughter wants to get presents for all of her friends, and my son is doing a Secret Santa with his friends.
Oh, I hear you. And if you're looking to raise kids that are financially responsible, we have got a lifesaver recommendation for you that you need to check out. It is Greenlight. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families that gives kids and teens an easy and fun way to gain financial literacy, all while giving parents peace of mind.
You can send instant money transfers, automate allowance, and even keep an eye on kids' spending with real-time notifications. Meanwhile, your kids can begin their journey towards financial autonomy by learning how to save, invest, and spend wisely.
So sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/NGM.
That's greenlight.com/NGM to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/NGM. But Bill, I want to hear your take on that because you were shaking your head when I told you that story.
Well, just typically taking away something that kids are passionate about to try to motivate them for something that they aren't passionate about doesn't work. It just builds resentment. The majority of kids go on strike, and I think that, so what we talk about so much in our book is about communicating with the kids in a respectful way, and about that motivation is something that, as Ned said, I mean, we have these three components. And we talked to the people who've made up self-determination theory, the really premier theory of motivation. And we said, we feel like you're going to lean on one, it's autonomy. He said, absolutely. And I think that one of our basic principles in terms of motivating is don't work harder to help a kid do anything than the kid does. Because if you spend 90 units of energy trying to get a kid to do something, he'll spend 10. And it doesn't change until the energy changes. I saw this early in my career. I see so many kids with learning disabilities or ADHD who they aren't motivated, they don't seem to be motivated for anything. And so adults spend 90 units of energy trying to get the kids to do their work. The kids do less and less. And it doesn't change until it starts to feel like this is my life. And so the message is that I love you and I'm willing to do anything I can to help you. But I'm not willing to work harder than you do because I'm going to weaken you, because you're going to think that somehow I'm responsible for your learning or your development. So I
was going to say, right, I had a colleague who's a college counselor, and a kid said to his parent, I worry that if I get into college, it will be because of you. And if I don't, it will be because of me. What a lose-lose situation, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think it's so true because it comes down to the kids have to be able to want to do it on their own. Like you said earlier, I'm not going to follow my kid around. My goal is for my kid to be able to move on in their life. I can't. And you know what else? I'm sorry. My kids passed me in math like back in 4th grade. So really, I'm hoping that they're able to continue with that problem-solving skill without my help in any way, shape, or form, because they're already out of my realm.
Well, and really for the parents out there who see like a situation like mine where taking away actually worked, it's actually very hard on me. And I could see how it's hard on other kids. And this is why I've chosen like not to raise my kids this way with a focus on grades, is because you get so in that people pleasing mindset that any way you want to veer off the path as an adult or take risks, like you have this intense amount of fear and pressure that really impedes you growing up. It really impedes you being successful. And something that you also talked about in the book is about this idea of giving your best effort on things, how that's very misleading and kind of a slippery slope.
You know, we like the idea of pursuing excellence, of trying to do a good job on things and not just being half-assed. We like that a lot. But also some of the parents that we work with have kids who are just obsessively driven. And the parents say, well, you know, we say we don't care about your grades. We just want you to do your best and do your best on everything you do. Well, I mean, to be honest, I don't think any of us all, you know, actually do our best on everything. And Ned has this great cartoon where a kid is showing up, holding an assignment to his parents and saying, is this my best? You know, how do you know? And because perfectionism is so much on the rise now in young people, it's dramatically increased, that we think it's healthy to say, that's good enough. Okay, you spent enough time on that. That's good enough. As opposed to everything has to be your very best.
And because perfectionism it's fear driven, right? Basically, if I do my best, then I'm safe. But which is a different thing from setting a goal. I want to get these grades, or I want to run this mile, or I want to do this, where you're setting a goal and you're anticipating reward, right? Which is dopamine, right? Which is the neurotransmitter of anticipation, of excitement, where perfectionism is fear driven. And so kids, I see this all the time. They get this or that reward and they're not excited. They're relieved. There's a story in the book about this girl I worked with who was brilliant, got a 15 390 out of 1600 on the SAT, bursts into tears. I'm thinking someone should take us out for ice cream, right? And I looked at her and I said, you, my friend, are a crack addict. And she recoiled. And I said, what do you mean? I said, you've had 437 consecutive A's. And if you were to get a C, you would burst into flames. You burst into pieces. And she said, I would never get a C. And the kids always laugh when I say that, but it wasn't like, oh, tutor geek, you have no idea whom you're dealing with. There was no swagger. There's no confidence. She was paralyzed with fear of achieving at that level. And I thought, this is a terrible way. And in part because, as you made the point, Joanne, that leads kids to then be fearful of taking the very risks that lead them to higher things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whoops,
True.
don't want to be there, right? And it also leads them to, if their inner monologue of perfectionism is this drip feed of fear, they need to come up with other ways to reduce the fear, which leads to substance use disorders, right? So this girl, I see her 2 years later, we run into her at a grocery store and she's like, hey, and I'm like, hey, how are you? And she's like, I'm great. I'm like, really? And she's like, oh yeah. And I finally learned to relax. And I'm like, I'm thinking, maybe you TM, did you like Bill? No. How'd you learn to relax? Smoking pot.
I'm seeing that a lot.
Oh yeah.
Along like my friends too. Like people are going to like other substances just to relax instead of actually learning to relax.
If you don't know, Jess Leahy, who's probably most well known for the Gift of Failure, has a wonderful new book out called The Addiction Inoculation. And the cliff notes on it, the spark notes on it are, if you don't have healthy ways to relieve stress, you will use unhealthy ways to relieve stress. So much better to do TM than to do pot.
Yes. She's a 2-timer on the podcast too, Ned. You guys are both.
There's nobody better. Oh, guy.
Well, and I think you guys both brought up a really great thing, like to kind of backtrack a little bit here on that whole best effort, because it does come down to like your cartoon you were talking about, who decides the best effort. And 90% of the time, it's the parents who are the ones who are deciding what's the best effort. And we all know that like as adults, how insulted would we be if somebody else came up to us and was like, well, I heard that podcast, that wasn't your best effort. And you're like, excuse me, or that last book, that really wasn't your best effort. Excuse me. Yeah. I put every bit of my blood, sweat, and tears. That is so insulting to say that to your child. Yeah, I know you got to be, but that really wasn't your best effort.
It's demotivating.
And it's moving the goalpost, and it's moving the goalpost over. And we talk about in the book, it's a little bit like swimming towards it's a child and you're swimming towards your parent, and they just keep pulling away from you, right? I mean, so it's oh my gosh, and when you don't really get to stop and celebrate and go, yay me.
Yeah. It's no wonder we have such a high rate of anxiety and depression and dealing with this mental health crisis, especially with our teens, because of so much pressure being put on them these days.
And there's so much evidence that arguably the message you can give your kid is, I love you no matter what you do. And I'm happy with you no matter what you do. And even if you do a half-assed job on something, as opposed to that, I approve of you if you do your best, then I approve of you. And I just think it's a better message to tell kids.
Yeah, I think it's a better message too. And I want to clarify, a half-assed job is fine for some things. Like,
we don't be 100% all the time. Some things gotta give.
Yeah. And
I should point out, for years, because I do all this test prep, I work with all these people who, because they get so stressed out, they completely lose their wits, right? And to be helpful, I only have to be a half-wit.
I like that.
So what do you say to parents whose kids are in these schools that are pushing really good grades and going to college and being the best? I say it from a personal situation because my daughter's in one of those kind of high stakes schools, and she'll come home and be like, oh my gosh, I need to do this. I need to do this. I'm like, do you have to do this? And my message at home is completely counter to the messages she's getting from her friends and her teachers. What could I do at home to kind of lower the stress level?
We're hitting that time of year where my brain gets so overloaded in December that I look for anything to make life easier. And I have to say, Brie, that Green Chef is one of those services.
Yes, Green Chef is there to take away the dreaded, oh my goodness, what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? You can eat clean all holiday long with over 80 weekly meal options each week, featuring things like quick and easy, protein-packed, calorie smart, or my personal favorite, the keto options.
And you don't have to lose track of healthy eating habits during the holidays because because every Green Chef customer gets a free session with one of their registered dietitians who can walk you through how to make clean eating work for you, which is very cool.
And I have to say that I have been loving their recipes lately. They put things together I have never thought of. This week, we're trying the lemon basil caper pork with sauteed cauliflower, bell peppers, almonds, and feta cheese, my favorite. Their recipes make it so easy to support my wellness goals without skipping on flavor.
For Green Chef's best deal of the year, get $250 off with code NGM250 at greenchef.com/NGM250. That's greenchef.com/NGM250. And don't forget to use that code NGM250 to get $250 off.
Green Chef, the #1 meal kit for eating well.
My son is playing a game right now on his computer where he's a thief and the cops are after him. So I'm so excited about this new app, Give As We Grow, where instead of being the quote unquote bad guys, kids are practicing giving back.
That is so cool, Joanne. I really wish that there was something like this when my kids were younger that got them excited about giving back to others and helped them build a better understanding of what it really means to volunteer.
Give As We Grow is the first of its kind free educational mobile app for children ages 8 to 11 that teaches kids via fun, service-focused minigame quests to tap into their unique talents and interests to help others.
And did you know that studies show that there is a biological connection between generosity and happiness, and that volunteering improves people's physical and mental health? I mean, kids who volunteer typically do better in school and are less likely to engage in risky behaviors. And that is something that I think we all want for our kids.
Ready to spark a new movement in generosity? Find and download Give As We Grow for free in the App Store for Android and iOS. And for resources for the whole family, visit giveaswegrow.org. For her.
Well, I think that you don't want to continually give the message where you go to college isn't that big a deal. I mean, there's a lot of things. The reality is that for most people, where you go to college doesn't seem to make hardly any difference in your life. And so most kids grew up with this drip feed of misinformation about what really contributes to happiness and success in life. Now, it doesn't help to kind of keep preaching at a kid and keep telling her, but if she's really anxious and concerned, we recommend saying, I can't take that away from you. I can't tonight, and I'm not going to try. But I really see it differently. And at some point, if you're interested, I'd love to kind of give you another way to look at it. You just consider that maybe you can still pursue excellence, but just not have it be so stressful, not have to be so fearful. And so many of the kids that I work with are underachievers. And the first thing I tell them, and it's always motivating, is that you could flunk every one of your high school classes. Then if you decide that was a bad idea, you can go to community college for 30 credits. And then you can apply to most colleges in the country without showing your high school transcript. When I tell them that, when I take fear out of the equation, that I'd say it's another way you can get there. It just motivates them to work hard. With kids in high achieving schools, they're at just such high risk that we mentioned in the book that the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation published a report in 2017 on the major causes of stress and anxiety in adolescence. And it's poverty, trauma, discrimination, and excessive pressure to excel. And so I think we have to be working with schools to give kids a sane message and help them understand how many paths there are to finding your place in this world.
I love that. And what I would add to that is a point that we often make, that most mental health is changing thinking from I have to I want to. We're back to that perfectionistic vibe. And so are there advantages to going to, Princeton? Yeah, you get to dress in orange for 4 years. I'm teasing, right? I mean, these are wonderful places of learning. And obviously there are advantages to being a graduate of an elite, of a highly selective college. But it's simply not true that in order to have a wildly successful life, that you have to graduate from the most successful place, in part because we know that people develop at an uneven pace. I mean, the thing I always laugh about is I remember being in 7th grade and whoever the tallest boy is in 7th grade and is lording it over everybody else. So you're like, enjoy it now, right? Because you're not going to be the tallest one in 12th grade. And so the same way, the kids who are valedictorians of their class 10 years later are not more successful than everyone else. And so we want young people to develop themselves. We want them to be educated because it's good for them. It's good for their families, their schools, their community. It's good for the whole darn country to develop talent wherever it is. But we just want to do it in a way that's sustainable. So, for your daughter, if she takes school really seriously, I think it's great that you're working really hard to become a better writer. I think it's great how seriously you take math and you're really becoming a mathematician. And so we can take that same energy, but try to help her reframe how she's thinking about it. And so don't talk her out, because it's hard to talk people out of working hard, but to have her focus on something that becomes much more internalized of I have a really curious mind for science. So it's internal trait rather than externalized. I got another A. Otherwise, we're back to smoking pot at Yale.
Yeah. And Joanne, another thing is that there's this research that suggests with high achieving kids, they're taking a test. If you ask them to write for a few minutes about their highest values, it becomes much less stressful to take a test, because it puts these things in perspective. And just talking with kids, and we talk about this in the book, talking with kids about what's really important to them, what do they really value? And for most kids, their highest value is not status and prestige or doing far better than anybody else, have more money than anybody else. That's not really, it's kindness, it's friendships. And just kind of having a reminder and just asking kids, is the way you're pursuing your development now, are you living your life now, is it consistent with your highest values? And make that a family discussion. We're all trying to work on having a life that's consistent with our eyes.
I think that is a great suggestion. And I am going to bring that up at dinner tonight because I mean, just you saying of it, I'm like, no, I don't think achieving is her highest value, but I think she feels it should be, or it's forced on her, or that's how it works. And so I'm going to bring up that discussion about values tonight. Yeah, I think that's great. Well, thank you, Ned and Bill, for joining us. This has been amazing. I have so many more questions for you that unfortunately we'll have to just do another podcast episode on because it's too much. But before we leave, what is coming up for both of you that you're really excited about?
Well, the launch of our new book, What Do You Say? How to Talk with Kids to Build Motivation and Stress Tolerance and Happy Home, comes out on August 17th. So we're writing some articles, and we have a lot of podcasts, including this wonderful podcast. That's pretty fun. I mean, the self-driven child has just been such a great experience for us, and we're looking forward to this one too.
What he said.
That's what I wrote. Follow up, and I go ditto.
Ditto.
That works too. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are so happy to have you guys. Thank you so much. Your book is fabulous.
It is fabulous. And so parents pick that up because what we didn't go into is that you also have like so many phrases to say to kids and so many like examples, which I know
that's
that
what
our
I
audience
need. I need the cliff notes. I need them. When this, say this.
Yeah.
And one quick last thought, part of the reason we wrote this book is that we're not very effective in our communication when we're stressed, but we're also get pretty stressed when we're not effective in our communication, because as parents, we have all of this hard-earned wisdom that we want to share with our kids. And when we say it in a way and it doesn't land, like we were talking about before, we get super worried because this stuff that it's so important. And what if he doesn't hear it? And so to your point about the kind of the lines, a lot of this is really simply about the how. All the great instincts that your listeners already have as parents, just giving them a different approach, some other tools to kind of get those same messages across in ways that are more effective. And that's better for them, a whole lot less stressful. And it's a whole lot better for their kids to hear the wisdom that mom and dad have to share.
Most definitely.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having us.
So one of the things in that interview, first of all, fantastic interview.
Oh my gosh, I loved it.
Fantastic. But one of their quotes that really, really stuck with me. And I actually, the night after we had the interview, I talked with my family about this. And it was, if things go right, you'll have a longer relationship with your kids as adults than as kids.
I think that's a really good wake-up call.
It's a good wake-up
call. Because when we're in the parenting weeds and we're not sleeping because our kids are up all night long, thinking about those whole first 5 years.
We're worrying about them constantly.
Right? Or when they're teenagers and they used to talk to us about everything, now they barely even look at us. We get so caught up in the here and now that we forget that sometimes our reactions and the way that we react to things that are going on in their life will have an impact.
Yeah, it definitely has an impact. It's made me think a lot about the relationship that I want with my kids, and versus trying to control everything and make sure everything goes right today, it's better just to be more non-reactive and make sure I'm just there as a support rather than a control.
Yeah, I will say that's definitely when I'm having my moments where I'm feeling like I'm just completely failing at parenthood, because let's be honest, we all have those moments where we feel like we just do not have it. The only thing that'll bring me back to center is that while things may be rough right now, I know that my relationship with my kids is the most important thing. So when I'm having a moment where I'm like, did I make the right choice? I'll ask myself that when I'm calm.
Yeah.
I can't do it in the moment, but when I'm calm, I'll be like, is this the right choice for our relationship?
Well, it's really hard to do in the moment. You kind of have to figure out what you're triggered by so that you can identify your trigger right the moment it happens. And you're like, okay, this is my thing to calm down. Like, I need to calm down. I mean, yesterday I was talking in the car how I had this really short window to get my daughter to dance class and then pick my son up from school. And I told my daughter, I'm like, I need you in the car by 3:35. Well, she come out at 3:40. And instead of being like, oh my gosh, why were you so late? Rushing her to dance class and then rushing to pick up my son, where I knew I would be a wreck. Like, I knew I would be so worried that I would be late to get him. Mm-hmm. I was just like, it's okay, you're late, but we do need to go pick up your brother first before we go to dance. And she got really upset, but I stayed calm. She didn't talk to me the whole time we were waiting for him. I stayed calm. And then when I picked her up from dance, it's like nothing ever happened. Like, it was a non-issue.
Yeah, because she'd had time to work through it. And even when she came down the car, even said that she was sorry she was late. She just didn't realize that being late was going to have actual consequences.
Yeah. Looking at it, I'm like, that is such a preferable way for me to handle this instead of yelling at her and being all stressed out.
And then you would have been stressed out when you picked up your son.
Exactly.
And probably would have ended up snapping at him for something. And he would have been like, what did I do?
Instead, I just got to be really calm. I'm like, have a good time at dance.
Yes.
And it was all fine. Feelings are temporary, and the relationships that we have with our kids are the most important.
Yeah. So I have to say, you have to read this book. It is phenomenal.
It is.
What do you say? Talking with Kids to Build Motivation, Stress Tolerance, and a Happy Home. It is available everywhere you get your books at. I mean, it's going to be across the board. Let's help them make this a New York Times bestseller.
Yes, we got early copies. We read it, and I can tell you, you want to get this book. You want this.
This had such a positive impact on me, just as much as The Self-Driven Child, and I loved The Self-Driven Child. This is going to be one of our highly recommended books for all of our No Guilt moms to check out.
So remember, the best mom is a happy mom. Take care of you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for stopping by. Are you looking for something to listen to with your whole family? Then check out 6 Minutes, produced and created by Gen Z Media. With over 200 twisty, cliffhanger-filled episodes, 6 Minutes tells the story of 11-year-old Holiday, who is pulled from the icy waters with no memory of who she is or where she came from.
3 years ago, Brinley Pasternak helped the Anders family uncover the truth about Holiday's past. Now she'll need them to help her find the truth about hers. In 6 Minutes Out of Time, the long-awaited sequel, Cyrus Anders is found unconscious near the mysterious Elixir Academy in Florida, and Brinley learns the school may have a shocking connection to her missing mother.
Dive in now and get the most downloaded family audio adventure in history. Follow 6 Minutes wherever you get your podcasts. You can listen early and ad-free with the GZM family subscription.